Hey, it's Todd, and today we're going to talk about a bunch of random stuff like Mr. Robot, GPS tracking, and Raspberry Pis, so stick around. Hey, welcome back, it's Todd, and today is Tuesday, and I have kind of a bunch of random stuff that I want to talk about today. The first thing up on the agenda is Mr. Robot. Many of you have probably seen this show. It's been around. It came out in 2015. Really this drama that follows around a character named Elliot and his various hacking related adventures. It's been kind of praised by the programming community and developers worldwide for being one of the most accurate portrayals of what we do that's ever been on television. And that's due in large part to a number of consultants that they actually brought on to help develop the show. Today I want to talk to you about this. And what this is a FedEx package that was delivered to me yesterday. I have not opened it yet. What this is a gift being sent to me from the actual Who is Mr. Robot Twitter account. I have been conversing back and forth with this Twitter account since 2015 in direct messages. I kind of lucked out really early on in the run of the show. I think it came out in June, and I started talking to them in August. They kind of contacted me, and they've been sending me really cool swag ever since. I have some Funko Pops. I think that was from the eCoin perks, though. But I have a Mr. Robot hoodie. All kinds of really cool stuff that they've sent me throughout the year. But this right here is what they sent me yesterday. Essentially, this is kind of my, as they put it, "Hello, friend. Thank you for being part of our revolution till the very end. Your loyalty didn't go unnoticed, so we'd like to send you something from F Society. If you accept, please provide your full name and U.S. mailing address." Not really sure what this is. It came FedEx Express. It's very light. It feels like there's some kind of raised item in here. But it's still cool that they thought of their fans and they decided to send me this little gift. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and take a look at what's inside. And that's what it is. So they sent me this webcam cover. So it's just a little clip that you can stick to your laptop and use to slide over to cover up your webcam. So pretty cool. Very nice of them to send that to me and to remember their loyal fans. So thank you to the folks at the Who is Mr. Robot Twitter account. Very cool. All right. Next up. So I did a few projects over the winter break, and I want to talk about two of them real quick. Now, I'm going to go into hopefully a little more depth in a future video about this. I actually definitely plan to do so. But let me show you here. Like I said, I did two projects over winter break. One of them was a GPS tracker, and I built that using LoRa boards. So let's take a look real quick here at the end result. GPS tracking device via LoRa boards. And what these are really cool little ESP type boards. They're manufactured by Heltec. In fact, here, let me show you this guy. Get these out of the way here. So this is the Heltec LoRa board. This is one that I destroyed in my adventures, but it's a really cool board. Basically, it has this JST connector right here for batteries and this OLED display, a couple onboard buttons, and it comes with this antenna, which connects up right to the board right there. What is a LoRa board? Basically, a LoRa board is this long-range board that allows you to connect two boards together point to point and kind of form this little individual network that you can communicate back and forth. So what actually is LoRa? LoRa, basically it uses the license-free spectrums in the RF band. 433 megahertz, the 868 meg range, and in Australia and North America it uses the 915 megahertz band. Basically, this enables long-range transactions more than 10 kilometers, they say, in rural areas with really low power consumption. It's a way to have two boards talk to each other in kind of this nice little long-range network so you can do things like I'm doing here. So what I've set up here is this GPS pet tracking device. Two different devices in this example. This device is what I'm calling the gateway, and this device is what I'm calling the client. The gateway sits in the house, connects to the Wi-Fi network, and receives messages from the client. And when the gateway receives a message from the client over the LoRa network, it then publishes that message containing the GPS coordinates to a MQTT topic for further use in the cloud. So the client itself has one of these Heltec LoRa boards in it, as well as a battery, a lithium-ion battery, a GPS tracking chip. I have the Heltec board soldered to the GPS chip, the battery over here, which connects up to the back of the Heltec board. And when I connect up the battery, or if I connect up the actual USB power supply, the client will then go into receiving the GPS coordinates and broadcasting that to the LoRa network. The gateway will then receive those coordinates, and as I said, broadcast that up to MQTT. Cool project that I built over Christmas break, and like I said, I plan to make a video in a little more detail on how that works in the future. Alright, so the final project that I worked on over winter break was a cool little thing that I've been meaning to do for a long time, and that is to create a Plex media server out of a Raspberry Pi. So I had this giant old Dell all-in-one desktop that I always used to use as my Plex media server. Home movies, pictures, things like that, my music, all was stored on this old desktop, and it took up a ton of space. I mean, it was like 24-inch all-in-one, and it was just getting so old. The hard drive was failing on it, so I knew I had to do something. So I had a bunch of Raspberry Pis laying around here in the house, so I decided to try out the Raspberry Pi Plex media server. The Pi that I used initially was a Raspberry Pi 3B. I did have a bad SD card at first, and I knew it was bad from the last time I tried to use it for a Pi-hole server. So I did have to replace that SD card. Once I replaced the SD card and got everything up and running, the Plex media server has been working pretty decently for me. The only thing I have noticed from it is that it does tend to have a little bit of lag when I'm trying to pull up pictures. It's not really built for the kind of job of being a full-blown media server. So what I did to kind of try to address the issue was I ordered this Vilros Raspberry Pi 4 starter kit. So the Vilros Raspberry Pi 4 starter kit, I picked it up on Amazon. I believe it was $80, I think. But the really cool thing about this one is this is the Raspberry Pi 4 4GB kit, and it comes with an aluminum case with a fan. I'm gonna open this kit up, take a look at it, and maybe put it together here. And basically the plan is to swap out the Pi 3 that I have downstairs with this Pi 4 with 4 gigs of RAM, and hope that the media server runs a little bit better. It runs pretty decently. I was actually up in Ohio last week for Code Mash, and I streamed some TV shows from my hotel in Ohio, and it works really good. I mean, pretty flawlessly. I have no complaints about it, but I thought I could just get the performance a little better. So let's open up this Vilros Raspberry Pi 4 with aluminum case with fan. So let's open this up and take a look. First thing we get is a neat sticker, and everybody loves stickers. Next thing we have is the power supply with on-off switch, and the next thing is the actual Pi 4 itself, as I said, with 4 gigs of RAM. Next up is the aluminum case with fan. This thing is pretty darn hefty. Actually kind of surprised with how heavy that is. That seems like a really heavy duty case, and I kind of like that. We'll see how it ends up working once we get it out of the box, put everything together here, but that is really cool. Next up, we have a little card support, which is always nice. This is a bonus item. Please accept this bonus item as a token of our appreciation for choosing Vilros. So this guy, actually, I've been needing one of these. This is pretty nice. This is a, if I'm not mistaken, this is a micro HDMI to HDMI cable. And another nice thing that will also come in handy is this guy, which is another HDMI, this time again a micro HDMI. So this is a micro HDMI to female, and this guy is a micro HDMI to male. And that's it. So we have a quick start guide, which again is pretty nice. Always good for beginners if you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi. Good idea to read through the quick start guide from Vilros. Alright, now let's take a little more detailed look at the contents of the kit. So, because I'm so anxious to dig into this case, let's dig into that first. Alright, so the aluminum case with fan. Check this guy out. As I said, it's got a good bit of heft to it. Not sure what that weighs. Let's weigh it. So I have my Bluetooth scale, SKALE, which is another awesome product, by the way. This thing has a fully documented API and can be used with Bluetooth Low Energy in the browser. I've done it before and it's really awesome. But yeah, an actual scale that comes with a documented API. It's not cheap, but to me, worth the money that I spent on it. It was about $99. It's well built, pretty solid, and it has a documented API, so who can complain about that? So let's turn that scale on. 131 grams for this case. Wow, that's, like I said, that's pretty hefty. And I'm happy with that. It seems solid. There's the little fan. You could see that guy, which I'm assuming just connects to power and ground from the Pi directly up to the headers. And there is instructions, so we will, of course, follow those to the letter. But it comes with a little Allen wrench with a screwdriver end. And there's our heat sinks and a couple probably mounting screws, actually screws to hold the case closed. So that is the aluminum case. Comes with openings for all your ports on the Pi. So we'll get that assembled in a few minutes here and check that out. This guy, as I said, a micro HDMI to female, which is handy for using your standard HDMI cables that you've already got, but you have to get it adapted to micro HDMI, so that's handy. And we have, again, micro HDMI to HDMI. Another handy cable to have around. So this guy is your standard American 120 AC adapter. And the nice thing about this guy, first of all, is that it's USB-C. Second of all, it has this inline on-off switch. So if you want to turn your Pi on or off, as we all know, Raspberry Pis do not have on-off switches, but that is a nice feature to throw into the power cord to have that on-off switch. And finally, let's take a look at the Raspberry Pi itself. So that is the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B, 4 gigabytes of RAM. That is the Pi 4. Comes with a 64-bit quad-core Cortex A72 processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 2 micro HDMI ports that support 4K output, 2 USB 3.0 ports, 2 USB 2.0 ports, a gig Ethernet port, 802.11 BGN-AC wireless, Bluetooth 5.0, power over Ethernet capable, that requires a hat that's sold separately, 5-volt 3-amp USB-C power supply required, and that's included in the kit. Let's take a quick comparison of the Pi 4 to a Pi 3. Alright, so I have a Pi 3 Model B Plus and had this in the closet for a while now. And I just want to compare this guy to the 4. As you can see, they are pretty similar, almost exactly the same size. Alright, so on top here we have the Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gigs of RAM. And on the bottom here, we have the Pi 3 Model B with the standard 1 gig of RAM. Let's take a quick comparison of the two. Size-wise, they've got to be identical. I mean, if they're not identical, they're within millimeters of each other size-wise. Ports on the... So port-wise, the Pi 4 and the Pi 3 on the bottom here, you can see here that they swapped the Ethernet port from the left side looking at it on the Pi 3 to the right side looking at it. You still have your 4 USB ports on the side of the unit, but the only difference being that they swapped the Ethernet from left to right here. If we switch over to the side, so we still have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, but instead of the full-size HDMI on the Pi 3, we now have 2 micro HDMIs on the Pi 4. The other difference being here the micro USB for power supply has again been switched to USB-C for power. That's all I can see that's really different on between these two. So it looks like we still have our display ribbon connector and our camera ribbon connector in the same place. Still have 40-pin headers, and from what I can see just glancing at these, other than the differences in the ports, the form factor is identical, and all the other ports seem to be in the same spot. So, but it's still a nice upgrade because this guy has 4 gigs of RAM. And what I'm going to do is assemble that case, swap out the SD card from my Plex server, and see what happens. I'm imagining I'm going to get much better performance, certainly have to get much better performance on the Pi 4 with 4 gigs of RAM. So I will do that and show you what it looks like when it's assembled. Alright, so I have the Pi 4 assembled inside of the aluminum case. It was really easy, pretty straightforward. Of course, the instructions that were included were super helpful, but essentially it's just a matter of sliding the Pi inside, connecting up the fan leads to the black to pin number 14, and the red cable to pin number 2. So it's all assembled. It's just a matter of 4 screws on the bottom, give you these little rubber feet just to kind of make it a little no slip, and we have some mounting screws if we wanted to mount this on the wall. They make me a little nervous being that close to the board, but you know, I guess if you're really careful you could mount that on the wall. We have our SD card slot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to swap this out for the Pi 3 that I have downstairs right now for my Plex media server, and we'll see how it goes. Before I do that, I'm going to pull up my Plex server here in the browser, and it's not going to be anything really scientific. I'm not going to run any benchmarks or anything like that, but I am kind of interested to just take a look with my eyes and see how slow it loads some pictures in the current Plex server running on the Pi 3, and then do another check after we swap it out and see how that works. Alright, so here is my Plex server, and this is the photos section of my Plex server. As you can see, I've got quite a large amount of photos in my server here, so I'm just going to pull up a particular picture here, and you can see it's kind of slow as it loads. That's pretty slow to load a simple picture over the network and serve that up. As I scroll through some of these pictures, you can see again it's kind of slow as it actually loads these photos up. So I'm gonna swap it out and get it back online and take a look at if there's any difference within with the Plex server on Pi 3 and Pi 4. Okay, so I've swapped out the Pi 3 for the Pi 4 and plugged everything in, swapped out the SD card, and basically turned the switch on, and everything's back up and running here. Now let's take a look. Okay, so if I select a photo, it takes about 2-3 seconds to load, and as I scroll through the album here, it definitely has a noticeably better performance. Not quite as laggy and slow as it was before, but definitely both of them, I would have to say definitely both of them had performance that I consider acceptable, especially for a home media server that cost me under $100 that I can throw down in my communications closet and forget. It does the job. It serves the need. It fills the purpose. So, you know, again, under $100, a home Plex media server running, and I never have to worry about it, never have to think about it. Plugged in a external 2 terabyte hard drive, and I'm good to go. You know, plenty of storage in there for my own needs. But really a perfect project, and something that I suggest that you work on if you have some free time and you're interested in doing such a project. Again, the Vilros Raspberry Pi 4 basic kit with aluminum case and fan. I will put some links down in the description below. But other than that, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next video.